So one last thing that we can add to our interfaces are instance variables. And let's say if I'm in the circle class and I have math.py here, and I'm going to use math.py, say, a bunch of times with a bunch of different shapes. I don't want to keep continuing to write math.py. I might want to just set up an instance variable in my interface to pass that on to anything that's going to implement the interface. I can say, let's go public double pi, and we'll set that equal to math.py. So it'll just hold the value of math.py for us. And that way, instead, over here when we're doing circle, I can just say pi there, and then I don't need any parentheses there. So it makes the code a little bit lighter, and it may not seem like much here, but if I did 10 or 15 of these and some ellipses and some other things that I might need pi for, it would make a huge difference not to have to write that over and over again. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking this pi and I'm just making it available to circle by default. Now all instance variables inside of interfaces are going to be both public and final. Now the public part we already know, so what that means basically is I don't have to write this public, and you'll see if I do this, it obviously will give me the main method error, but this doesn't actually cause a compile error. Same thing over here, I have access to pi, so we're all good. If you don't know already, a final variable is a variable whose value cannot be changed. So I can't go into here even though I have access to pi. I can't simply go, let's go into the constructor and say pi equals 342. I can't exactly change the value of that because it is final. So if I run this, it'll get an error and it'll say cannot assign a value to the final variable pi. Final variables are different in that we can't change the value once they're created. You can't create or you can't declare only a final variable. You have to initialize it as you're declaring. So if I did in cut shapes, if I just tried to declare double.py, that would generate the same sort of error. I've got to set an equal sign. I've got to set it equal to something or initialize it. So that is the nature of instance variables in our interfaces, is that they are final, meaning you can't change the value of them, and it has to be the value has to be given to the variable at the time that we create it, and then it can never change. So same thing here. If I were just to declare one in the class. So let's say I wanted to declare private double number. And then down here in the constructor, I wanted to say number equals 47. Well, if I run that, and oops, I'm getting an additional error here because I forgot to recompile after I changed this back to the right value. So now if I go back here, it should not generate an error. So if I create this number variable and change it to 47, that's okay. But if I say final, and I do the same thing, it's going to say number might have not been initialized, so it'll get mad at me for not initializing it. So I can say equals 87, and we'll try again. And then it'll give me another error because I'm trying to change the value of it. So I can get rid of this, and only that is okay when I'm doing a final variable. I have to initialize it right away, and the value can never change. And that is the same with any variables that are in your interfaces, and the only other difference is that they are public automatically, and you can't change that as well because your classes that implement this interface are going to have to access those variables. Since they are forced to have them, they should be able to access them, I guess. So that's how variables work in inside of interfaces. Remember that they're public, final, and must be initialized by default. And you can see that that works just fine. Everything works just like it did before. So once again, just remember, instance variables inside of interfaces are public. They need to be initialized right away, and they are final, meaning their values cannot change.